Top 5 things you need to know about the Bicyclette Buyer and Seller Guides. Number 1, left and right pages and numbered pages. So if we head down here to this button at the bottom, you'll see grid view. When we click on that, it looks like this, where we can see all of the pages. And this is a very important view when you're dealing with workbooks like this, because it will give you an idea of how the left and right pages will look when printed. So you'll see that they're all labeled. So we have cover, and then we have the alternative cover, and then you'll see that they are indicated whether they're left pages or right pages. And if it's an alternate, meaning you can use it instead of this one, it's just an alternative way to lay it out, then it will be indicated here as well. So the thing about the grid view left and right pages that you need to know is that not all pages have to be left or right. This is just so that you can get an idea of how we intentionally laid it out. But there are some pages which lend themselves to being left or right pages. And those are pretty obvious when you take a look at them. For example, understanding market conditions could easily be a left or right page. There's no flow to it that indicates it would be a left or right page, whereas this marketing section is quite clearly laid out intentionally to be left and then right. So feel free to change these around, swap, edit, delete these pages, but keep in mind how it will look, how the final result will look when printed. And in order to do that, you just have to head up to the grid view and take a look at how they work together, left and right, left and right, left and right. Another way that I love to do this is to delete all the pages I know I'm not going to use. So for example, if I know I'm not going to use this alt cover, I'll delete it. If I know I'm not going to use this left page alternative, I'll delete it. And I'll also delete this welcome page so that I can clearly get an idea of what it will look like left and right, left and right, left and right. If you see here, if we scroll down to the Meet Erica section and you can see the left and right pages, you'll see how it will look once it's printed. You'll see that these two pages connect seamlessly, and it's easy to visualize how that will look. Whereas when we're in the single page view, it's harder to tell. We're not really sure if things line up. We're not really sure how they work. We're not really sure of anything really. So we like to go to the grid view and then take a look at how they look side by side. Another thing that we've done with this design is we've added numbered pages. So this is something that unfortunately Canva doesn't have the ability to automatically number the pages yet as of the time of this recording, but you can easily do this, change the page numbers as you see fit, or simply delete them if it doesn't work for you or if it's too much work for you. The only thing to keep in mind is that all the pages are currently laid out perfectly aligned with what the content section, how the content section is laid out for you here. So you would have to make these necessary changes when you change sections or you rearrange things to suit your needs, etc., etc. Number 2 is overlays. So in both the buyer and seller guides, you're going to notice that there is this overlay of if I double click, you'll see what it is. It's almost like a textured pattern. And what that does is it just adds a soft touch to the design. If this is not something that suits your brand style, you can easily delete it and it will be a far more modern, crisper image. But if you like that delicate, softer touch, then that is the overlay. You have to pay attention to the overlays that are over your design. So if you want to change the photo behind the overlay, you just move the overlay out of the way, just ever so slightly, so that you can access this area behind it. And then you can either go to your uploads or to the photo section, find a photo you like, and pop that one in instead. And then you just simply replace the overlay over top. So you'll notice that the overlay is present in most pages, not all, but most. So if you're having trouble or you're not able to see the overlay, or you're trying to swap out the picture and it's not working, it's most likely because there is an overlay. And in order to see for sure if there's an overlay, you always have the option of heading to Position, Layers, and then you'll see it right here. You'll see that here's the photo, what's in front of the photo, why can't I put my own photo in, and then right over that photo you'll see that there's an overlay, which is preventing you from doing so. So you just slide it out of the way and pop in your own photo. Similarly, on top of having the overlay over the images, we have a textured background on some pages. This texture is a paper texture, and again, if it doesn't suit your brand style, you can easily delete it, and it's a crisper, more modern effect. Number 3, brand color seep through. So you'll see here, if I go to grid view, you'll notice that all of the photos in this design have sort of a brown hue to them. And that is because that's very intentional, because what we did was we added a brown background to the pages so that when you pop your own image in place, so let's use the same image that we used before, and we reduce the transparency, that brown color will seep through. Now you can do this with your own brand colors as well. So if you have your own brand colors, whether it be red or black or green or whatever it is, it's a really great way to add a consistent feel throughout your document where all of the photos seem to seamlessly work together because there is your brand color seeping through ever so slightly. And all you need to do is reduce it to about 90%. If I were using this photo, I'd also head up to edit and reduce the brightness so I could see my text, so it wasn't taking away from the text itself. And also another thing we did for these was we blurred the image. So anytime you have text that you want people to pay attention to, it's a good idea to make sure that your image isn't competing with anything. So you can see there, now if I just reduce this a little bit more, you'll see the brown color seeping through, and all of a sudden this photo becomes the perfect match for everything else in the document. Number 4 is graphs and icons. So in the buyer and seller guide, we have a couple places where we're using graphs and a few places where we're using icons, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that. So number 1 is graphs in the seller guide. This is a graph that you have full control over, and you can change the percentages just by clicking on it. You can change all of the colors, the font, anything you want. One thing to note is that we have added the percentages over top because I just don't like the way that it's laid out with Canva. So if I show you, the legend didn't look good either. So if I show you how the labels show up, it wasn't as impressive to me as putting them in the graph itself. So that's something to note. But if you'd prefer to have your own labels, all you have to do is click this button on. Also, the same goes with the legend. If you want to make it easy for yourself, you can use that legend. Or you can use what was created here. I just believed that it had a little bit more of a visual impact, so we changed it. Another example of the graph and chart section is in the brokerage details. So you'll see here that when I click on this, it's not an icon, it's actually in the chart and graph section. So if I head up to elements and I scroll, let me get rid of calculator, and I scroll down to the chart section, you'll see that we have these infographic charts here. And when I click on the humans, this entire section pops up where I can choose any icon to represent my information. So I find these incredibly handy because we don't have to manipulate one icon at a time. It gives us, if you like these icons and you can use these icons, it just gives you a little bit more time-saving freedom to showcase whatever information you'd like to showcase. So in this case, it worked. And in order to change this, you would just click on it, change the colors up here, change the icon if needed, and you're good to go. Now, another type of icon we're using throughout is the regular icon. So you'll see here that we have all of these icons that were taken from the elements section. There might be a few that were uploaded by us, but they're still completely editable, meaning that you can change the color. If you want to change these steps, for example, and you can't find the icons in the elements section that work for you, then I'm going to share one of my favorite sites that work really well for this, called iconfinder.com. Okay, so here we are in Icon Finder, and I'm just going to type in something simple like house. So here is the initial result, and I'm going to make sure that I click on free so that I don't have to pay for anything. And then I am going to select one that I like. Let's say this one. And you're going to make sure that SVG is selected and download in SVG. The reason why we're downloading an SVG file is because once we upload that to Canva, it makes it editable, meaning we can manipulate the color. And that is definitely something we want because it's much harder to manipulate color outside of Canva. So I'm uploading it to Canva here. When I click into my design, you'll see that I can manipulate the color perfectly. So if you ever don't like the icons given to you in a template, that is always an option for you. I absolutely love Icon Finder. I use it all the time. So probably the trickiest part of this design is the spread effect that we've created over a couple of pages, and I just want to make it super simple for you. So a spread is just when you have two pages that have the same image behind it, kind of bleeding into one another, so it's the same image and it's cut down the middle. When you send this to print, it gets complicated without design programs that allow you to seamlessly match those two pages. So because Canva doesn't have that option, we need to manually make this work. So the trick that I use in order to do it with photos is when I'm using the same photo, if I double click on this, you'll notice that it's a very large photo, right? But I've cropped it so that I've pushed it all the way to the right. And then in the following page, I've pushed the image all the way to the left. And in doing so, I've created this spread where when you open the magazine, it will look like one continuous image. But the trick that I use whenever I'm doing spreads in Canva, so for example, I wouldn't have this chair cut in half on these pages. So here's what that might look like. I might have the chair like this, right? And that's bleeding off the page, which means that when we head back to the grid view, you'll see that now my eye is expecting to see it on this page, which means I would need to take this image and move it over ever so slightly so that when we head back to grid view, it looks like it's connected, but it doesn't, does it? It's not perfect. And with Canva, it's almost impossible to get right, because when we send it to the printer, they'll have crop marks and it never really truly works out. So my one trick for spreads like this is to find an area to, first of all, use a photo that you can break up like I've done here, and break it up so that there is a natural area of the wall. So here you can see that I made sure that the chair was on one page and the side table was on another, and nothing was being cut off, so that when it's printed, it just looks like one continuous wall here that's not being interrupted. Do you see how that works? We also did it with the home story section. So it's going to look, I made sure that none of these chairs were being cut off, so we didn't have the responsibility of adding the other part of the chair on the next page. The one exception to this, because I thought it looked a little funny to not have the laptop on the other page, was I did add the laptop here so that when you can see in the spread, it will print so that it's one continuous laptop. And I'll show you the flip book after this so that you can see how it turns out. But this is a little tricky. So this is the trickiest part of this design, but it's absolutely doable. And I'm going to show you two options. Option number one is you just get rid of this extra piece. You just get rid of it. It's totally fine. It's not going to be a horrible look. I just wanted you to have the option because I do think it'll add a little bit of sophistication if this bleeds on to the next page. So in order to do this, what you're going to do is you're going to use rulers. So you're going to head up here. If your rulers aren't showing, head to File, View Settings, Show Rulers and Guides, and that will show these sections here. Let me make this bigger. Okay, so then in your ruler section with your mouse, you're going to drag one of these lines to the top of your laptop and the other one to the bottom of your laptop or anything that you want to bleed over. Okay, now when we go to the next page, it automatically will apply those lines and we can see if it matches and if it's all good. Again, you can just delete it if that's too complicated for you. It will look great. And let me show you what the final result looks like. And here is the flip book. And you can see that it's lined up pretty perfectly. We have a little bit of a glitch here with the floor plan, but nothing too severe. So do you see how that would print now? Flip books are great because they'll show you how they will print, and if you like it, then you're good to go. I love using flip books to always test my designs before I send them to print. And just so you know, you can make a flip book for free using Canva. You just head to Share, you head to More, you type in Hey Zine in the search bar, and then you click this button and it will create a flip book for you. So you can always test your booklets and designs before having them printed. It will show you a pretty accurate idea of what it will look like once it's printed. And it's a great tool to send to potential clients as well. And that is it, my friends. Happy designing, and I hope you enjoy the Bicyclette Buyer and Seller Guide.